Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Um, this this is not your regular video. This is not one of those videos where we talk about things that make us feel good or things that make us feel better. But I honestly believe that this is a conversation that needs to be had. This is a video that needs to be made. I had a different video that I had recorded a while back, and I was actually editing it when I thought, you know what, I really can't go on like this. I can't post a video, post a regular video as though my country were not literally burning around my ears. Um, for weeks, there's been a conversation in the news cycle, there's been all sorts of hot takes, and I've not known how to react. I've tried to keep some distance from it because there's just trigger warning. I might say certain things in this video that will remind people of things they would rather forget, but we must tell our stories. We must say the things that impact our lives. Um, my family moved to Niger State nearly 30 years ago. So my experience is as one who grew up in the north, as a Christian who grew up in the north. Um, there are things that Christians in the north have talked about for years, but that we've normalized as a country. Um, and I feel like because I grew up in the north, but I also lived large portions of my life in the north. So in the west rather, I grew up in the north, but I schooled in the west. And for any of us that has that experience, you realize that at sometimes it feels like living in two different countries. The north is vastly different from the west, it's different from the south, it's different from the east. And sometimes when people talk about their experiences in the north, it's hard for people in the west to relate with what we're talking about. But these things are real, these experiences are real, these are people's lives and people's stories. For many years, people Christians have had to live with religious intolerance in the north. Um, to the extent that we got to the point where Christians were being killed systematic. Well, let me not say systematically, but I'm not here for the semantics, to be honest, because we know that Christians in southern Kaduna for years have been complaining, have been talking about their villages being sacked, families, scores of people being killed. We've normalized it. We've normalized people being killed for no other reason other than their faith. We've normalized people being kidnapped. We've normalized Catholic priests disappearing. We've normalized people being kidnapped from seminaries and their dead bodies turning up. We're not okay. We're not okay. Over the years, we've called it different names. We've called it farmer herder clashes, we've called it terrorists, we've called it Boko Haram. But like I said, there may be a bit of each of these things going on, but for us to deny that people are dying for their faith, that people are being targeted for their faith, is to do a disservice to the memory of those who have died, to the families that are daily grieving their loved ones. As a Christian who lived in Niger State for as long as I've lived, I can also say that I've seen the state and the environment change over the years. But here's the thing, like many of us that grew up in the north and are Christians, we walk a fine line. We walk a thin line where you're careful what you say, you're careful what you do, because you know that literally what seems like a simple thing to you, what seems like a Christian thing to do, can literally be the trigger for a religious crisis where you live. I remember as a young girl in Mina, I would always be careful about where I walk in the market on Friday at 2 o'clock. Once it's prayer time, if I'm in the market, I just literally sit down where I am and try, because then parts of the market are blocked. You don't want to come out of a section of the market and find that, oh, you are literally in front of the people that are praying. Um, but the market is even too far. There have been instances where our house was close to a mosque, not on the same road as a mosque, but close to a mosque. And there's a particular house we lived in before we moved into our own house. It was on a road that was adjacent to the mosque. But every Friday, without fail, Muslim worshippers would spread to the front of our house gate, such that there was no entry and no exit from the gate. So I learned to time my movements. If I went anywhere and I knew that coming home, I'll get home around between 2 and like 2:15, 2:30, I would rather not just leave where I am, because I would have to be walking. I won't even be able to walk, let's be honest, because those prayer mats will be right in front of the entrance of the house, and you can't even say, oh, excuse me, I want to pass or something, especially as a woman. So I'll just stay put wherever I am and come back after the prayers. But that was our existence, that was our daily life. We've seen people lynched for preaching, not being a nuisance, but just because you were preaching. So even when these crises happen, we have to be measured in our words, because Deborah was lynched, and we had people saying, oh, she should have known better. She had lived in the north for that long. She should have known better. So we had people victim blaming. Um, like I said, these crises have been many decades, many decades. But here's where I take issue. We know that farmers and herders clash, but there's a set there's a set of targeted attacks where the people that are attacking are only attacking you because they consider you an unbeliever. And even when they attack, the phrases they shout can only be tied to a certain religion. So I say this to my Muslim friends and my family members, because then again, if you know me, you know that half my extended family is Muslim. I say this to my friends and my family members, and I say this in the gentlest way possible. If someone is killing another person because they are not of your faith, and you are doing it in a targeted, systemic manner, do you think that we should label that a religious genocide? Forget whether we want to call it a Christian genocide or whatever. If a genocide, because the people of Southern Kaduna have been shouting for years, we still have attacks on Christian schools, on Catholic schools. We have Catholic priests getting missing. We have so-called terrorists going to seminaries. They're not going to the seminaries because they think that is an Alfan, is a Almajiri that are there. They know why they are going there. So I say this in the gentlest way possible. Whether you choose to call it a Christian genocide or not, people are being targeted because they are Christians, because they are not Muslims. And it's such a sad commentary on the state of affairs in Nigeria that the only reason why we are seeing these things, why everybody seems to suddenly take an interest right now, is because, oh, America is interested. America is seemingly involved. And now everybody has a think piece, everybody has opinions. You have people, Christians, who are counting the cost of America's so called involvement in terms of theoretical minerals and resources that you think America is coming to take. When you had those resources, did it make your life any more valuable? When America has not come to take it, did it make your life any more valuable? I'm not saying that I welcome an American intervention, because we also know that everywhere that America has intervened, the country has been further destabilized. The conversation we need to have is the value that we assign to human life. For a long time, it has seemed like a northern problem. um People who don't live in the north have felt far removed from it. I remember some years ago, my uncles were trying to convince me to tell my mom to sell up everything she has in Niger State and move to the south or to the west. But today, we have these attacks in churches in Kwara, in Ekiti. So if she had sold her things 3 years ago and moved, and now the attack has spread to where she is or where she would have been, would she again pack up and sell up? The attacks are they're spreading more westward and southward. At some point, we are going to have this conversation. We're going to have to say it's not okay that people cannot go to a place of worship, their place of worship, regardless of where they are. We're going to have to hold each other's hands and tell ourselves the truth, whether we want to call it a genocide or whatever. If it's not a Christian genocide, how many times have we heard that Christians took up arms and went to a mosque and killed people? How many times have we heard that a certain group of people got up and went to an Islamia and abducted children? Why is it always one group that is getting involved? So if you cannot, it literally feels like a not all men argument. If you don't think that what these people do represents your religion, you should be at the forefront of the people calling for accountability, calling on the government to do something and say, no, these people are not doing this in our names, not trying to convince me why it's not a Christian genocide when I can see that the majority of people that are dying are Christians. I think we need to have an honest conversation amongst ourselves. Now we've moved from just randomly killing people in church to abducting children from school. I mean, Bring Back Our Girls is 10 years now, and many more girls have been taken. And I shudder to think what's happening to those girls in captivity. And of course, the government comes up with a knee-jerk reaction. In fact, why am I saying the government comes up with a knee-jerk reaction? There's a list published that, oh, all schools are closed. No, some certain unity schools have been closed. But then you have the Ministry of Education saying that that list did not. Can we be serious for once in our lives? Can we be coordinated? And then we hear that, oh, all the schools in Niger State have been closed. I'm not saying they should not close schools. My question is, in the period where the schools have been closed, are they going to fish out the bandits? Are they going to eradicate the bandits? Are we going to close schools for a brief, for, I don't know, till the end of the year and then reopen in January? Are we hoping that we would have forgotten by January that this thing happened? I worked for many years in the interior of Niger State. Some of the villages where my teams used to go for outreach are villages that after a while people could know we had to drop those villages because of insecurity. This is my lived experience. There were days where I was sent on official assignment to places like Kotangora. That time, Kotangora was just coming up as a hub, and I literally pray till I get there and back safely because the roads were just unsafe. I remember one particular incident where there was an attack either shortly after I had passed or shortly after my team had passed, and they were like, oh, the bus that went, yeah, it was shortly after my team had passed, the bus that came right after them, people were kidnapped from the bus. That has been our experience. Whatever we want to call it, whatever name, whatever label we want to give it, let's remember that there are actual human beings. While we are counting costs in in terms of resources and investments, some people and families are counting costs in terms of lives lost and blood spilled. So while we are having these conversations, let's do it with a little decency. Let's do it with a little sensitivity. Hordes and hordes of students are missing, and we are asking ourselves whether if America intervenes, whether they are going to take our resources. This evening, I saw a news release by the government of Niger State that the number of people abducted has not been ascertained, and I was like, seriously? How long does it take to count? But then it later made sense when I was hearing that like 300 and something. And I'm like, how? How do you abduct over 300 people? You didn't abduct 300 people on motorbikes. Was there air power involved? Are we say they're not ghosts? The people that are catching people are not ghosts. We know them. There's speculation that the governor of Kebbi is now saying that someone gave instruction for. We know these things. We need to fear God, whether you are a Christian or a Muslim. And so, to my Christian brothers and sisters, like I said, I nearly gave into despair yesterday because it was like, where do we go from here? But then I told myself that when everything just seems like this, there's only one person. As Christians, there's only one person we believe in, and the only person we can turn to. So I encourage all of us to lift up our eyes to the hills, because that's the only place where our help. Even America cannot save us at this point. America cannot help us. We're going to have to lift up our eyes to the hills from where our help comes from. So my charge to everyone today who believes in God is to pray for Nigeria. Is to pray for Nigeria and ask God to intervene, to expose and destroy these plans, because I mean, human beings like you and I are sitting down to plot and enabling people to act in ways that fellow human beings will lose their lives in scores. And we're here talking about mineral resources and all whatnot. So before you give a hot take online, please think. If your sister or your brother, if your nephew or your niece, if your children went to school in the morning and you were called that they had been kidnapped, would your argument be whether this is a Christian genocide or not? God bless you.